In this video, we're going to build Laravel REST API with login and registration. We're going to build React frontend, connect it to the Laravel API, and build full stack application. And finally, we're going to deploy both the frontend as well as the API on custom domain. The frontend will be deployed on primary domain, and Laravel REST API will be deployed on API subdomain of the primary domain. Let's have a look at the demo. When you open the application, you're going to see a login page immediately. You can log in with an existing account or just create new account. I'm going to log in with my existing account. I'm going to type my password incorrectly and hit the login. We will see an error right here. So let's provide now correct password and hit the enter button, and we are inside the system. Okay, so we have the standard like admin panel type layout. We have the header, we have the sidebar on the left side, and we have the table. And we're going to implement this CRUD functionality of this table. And we're going to have also React router and navigation between pages. And of course, possibility to add new user, or edit an existing user, or of course delete new user. Okay, so let's try to add new user. I'm going to try to provide right here the same email address I have actually already used and submit this without password. So click save. I get these validation error messages immediately. I have to provide unique email right here, and let's provide some password and hit save. As soon as you save new user, we see also a notification at the bottom right corner of the screen, which automatically disappears after 5 seconds. Okay, and the latest user goes at the very top of the list. We can edit this and call this Sura22 and hit save. Again, we see the notification, user is updated. We can click on delete. It's going to ask the confirmation, and we click OK, and it's going to delete. Okay, so that is the whole functionality, but we're going to learn a lot by building this small application. And when we click logout, the currently authorized users token is deleted and the user is authorized. Okay, and then you can re-log in or just create new account. The project is not complicated, but there are many things to learn. In React, you're going to learn how to work with Context API, how to use React hooks, how to work with React router, how to create protected routes, how to create multiple layouts, how to connect to the API, and how to handle the authentication part. In Laravel side, you're going to learn how to create login and registration API endpoints, how to create basic CRUD API endpoints, how to create form request data, how to create resources, and more importantly, how to deploy your application on production environment. We're going to log in using SSH, clone our existing project using Git, connect to the MySQL database, and deploy our Laravel API like that. We aren't going to use FTP or other third-party tools to just upload your project files on a server. We're going to do it in a proper way. Hello everyone, my name is Ura and I'm the Codeholic. On this channel, I share my 10+ years of experience working as a professional software developer. So if you're new here, consider subscribing. Recently, I decided to make my focus more on building projects, building and deploying. If this is something that interests to you, make sure you subscribe to the channel and enable notifications. Also, let me know in the comment section your opinion about this particular project. As a choice of hosting provider, we're going to use Hostinger's shared hosting. I have been very skeptical about shared hosting many years ago, and once I tried to use it and I didn't like the experience, I didn't have any kind of configuration and about my PHP environments, so I was very limited. I had to upload files using FTP. That was the only possibility. I didn't have access to my SSH server. I didn't have access to Git, and that was basically a terrible experience. Since that, I haven't used shared hosting for many years. But recently, about 2 years ago, I discovered Hostinger's shared hosting services. And once I signed up and tested its services, I got really surprised. So they have everything, almost everything you might need. You have all control on your PHP extensions, control on your PHP version. You have possibility to create as many, not as many, like up to 100 MySQL databases. You have a free SSH SSL certificates, you have free domain as well when you purchase this premium shared hosting, and basically you have everything you might need. The shared hostings are not ideal for big projects. This is something as a disclaimer I should mention. Shared hosting projects are excellent for small and medium-sized projects. But if you expect your website to serve like thousands of people simultaneously, you should choose some other type of hosting system like a VPS or maybe a cloud hosting. But as I mentioned, shared hosting is excellent for small and medium type of projects. Even if you don't plan to take the hosting or shared hosting, I really encourage you to watch the sections which describe how to create certain things in the hosting control panel, because this is very user-friendly and very intuitive. And as I mentioned, we have also access using SSH. We can add public-private keys, connect to our normal SSH client, pull our project, clone our project using Git, and run artisan commands, and basically deploy everything normally, how it should be. Let's quickly sign up on Hostinger website and get the premium shared hosting. Let's type in the URL hostinger.com, the code holic. I'm not going to talk about every single feature of the hosting service, but let's focus on the most important ones. So we can get the premium shared hosting for $3 per month, and we have possibility to deploy up to 100 websites. We have free email access, unlimited SSL certificates, and free domain as well. And there are many other things. You can have a look in the see all features like SSH access, Git access, and so on. Okay, let's click this button to add this into the cart. Once you click the button, you have to choose the period for which you want to use your premium shared hosting. The most common one will be probably 12 months. However, the more time you choose, more saving you are making. Okay, but the domain is only included for the first year. So I guess the most common one will be to choose the hosting for 12 months. But whatever you choose, as I mentioned, you can scroll down below. You can enter your email address. You can provide a coupon code right here, the code holic, which will give you additional 10% discount on the price you see right here. And that price includes, in this case, this price includes 4 years premium shared hosting, 1 year domain, up to 100 websites, SSL certificates, and everything I mentioned above. And once you choose the hosting and provide a coupon code, enter your credit card details and submit secure payment. And then you will be redirected to the Hostinger H panel, from which we can get the domain, set up our hosting, and deploy our project. Before we actually start building the project, I'm going to mention a few applications you might need to install if you don't have it installed. First of all, we will need PHP. So as a choice of like PHP environment, I recommend XAMPP. I use it basically all the time. If I don't use Docker, I use XAMPP with the Apache and MySQL and everything. If you don't have it, if you have already PHP running, that's fine. You can use that. If you don't, then you can check the following link and download and install. We will also need Composer, which is a PHP package manager. And then I always generally recommend to stay with the Laravel official documentation and just have it open when you are building an actual application. Okay, so you cannot remember everything by heart. So just have it open, and if you need something, you can easily find it. And finally, I'm going to mention my website, thecodeholic.com, on which I decide to publish my premium courses. At the moment, I have building a full stack application course using Laravel, Vue.js, Alpine.js, and Talon CSS. So basically we build the front-end side, which is built with the Talon CSS, Alpine.js, and Laravel. And the admin side is built with the Vue.js and Laravel REST API. It is 23 hours content, 140 videos. I plan to release updates on this course, and you can check it out. You can watch its like promo video. You can watch its free resources as well. I have right here described what is the actual functionality of the project. I even have a link to the project working demo, and basically everything is described right here. So I recommend to check it out. If you find this interesting, maybe you can enroll this in the course. Okay, now let's start step by step. I'm going to close everything, leave only Laravel documentation opened. And the very first thing we need to do is to create a Laravel application. So for this, we're going to open CMD. And I'm going to navigate into basically a desktop, my desktop. I'm going to create a folder right there. So cd desktop, and then let's create a Laravel application. So you might need to install a Laravel installer if you don't have it installed. So just run composer global require Laravel /installer. Okay, just run the following command. If you have the installer already installed, don't worry about this, don't do anything. If you don't have, just run this. And when you run it, you're gonna have a Laravel command available. Okay, and just we need to create new project by running Laravel new and the project name. In this case, I'm going to call my project Laravel /react / full stack, maybe full stack, whatever. Okay, so let's just call this Laravel React full stack. So it's gonna create new projects, run the composer dependencies, everything what it needs, and then we can start building application. Okay, so our project was successfully created, and I'm going to open this using PHP Storm. So let's go in the File Explorer. I'm going to go into my dashboard. Let's grab the dashboard right here, and here's my project, Laravel React Full Stack App. So I'm going to open this as a PHP Storm project. Let's collapse this. It's going to take a few seconds. If you don't use PHP Storm and if you are familiar with the VS Code, you can stick with the VS Code. It's going to take a few seconds, and here it is. It's opening. Yeah, PHP Storm is an intelligent and really powerful IDE. It helps a lot building large applications. And now let's set up the project. So we have the application ready. So we have also .en file, which was created automatically by the Laravel new command when we created this. I'm going to configure the database connection into SQLite for simplicity. Okay. In this tutorial, I want to focus more on how to build the full stack application, how to connect the backend to the front end in React, how you can have a protected routes in React, how you can implement authentication, and so on. I don't want to go deep into like connecting to the MySQL database and things like this. So I'm going to do it very easily and just change the DB connection into SQLite. And then let's bring up the terminal. I'm going to use the PHP Storm's integrated terminal, which I have set into my Git bash. You can use CMD if you want. You just need to navigate into the folder we just created, and from here you can run any command which I'm going to run right here. Just make sure that you have PHP command available. So I'm going to close CMD and I'm going to run all the commands from here. So first of all, we're going to run migrations. PHP artisan migrate. Okay, it's going to ask me if I want to create a database. I'm going to type yes. So the database was created. The database was created under the database folder, and right here, database SQLite, and the migrations have been applied. Okay, now let's spin up the server by running PHP artisan serve. Okay, now let's open this in the browser. I'm going to type localhost port 8000, and here we have the Laravel application up and running. Now we have to create React project. So for this, I have to mention that you will need Node.js and npm. If you don't have it, just go to the nodejs.org and download that, the latest stable version, LTS version, and use that. When you install that, you're going to have an npm command available. Again, you can use CMD or any terminal. I'm going to use the PHP Storm's integrated terminal, and I'm going to create new React project inside my Laravel project. Okay, so I'm going to run npm create vite. Okay, you can run just npm create vite or @vite/latest. I'm going to do it easily and run just vite, npm create vite. So Vite is a new technology to scaffold the front-end applications using with like React or Vue.js or vanilla JavaScript. Okay, and right here we need to type why, we need to agree that, and what is the project name. So the project name will be React. I'm going to just call this React. Hit the enter, then we have to choose which framework we want to use, vanilla JavaScript or Vue.js or React or Preact or Elite or Svelte or others. We're going to stick with React, of course, and we don't want TypeScript in this tutorial. I'm going to stick with the JavaScript. Okay, so the folder was created. We can observe it. We have it React right here. And this is already a React application. Okay, now let's navigate into React folder and run npm install first, and then we have to run npm run dev. Okay, if you are already familiar with React, you probably know a command create React app. So I recommend to stick with Vite because it's super fast compared to create React app. Yeah, and Vite, in my opinion, is just really awesome. Okay, now let's run our React application by executing npm run dev. It's going to spin up the Vite server on the following address. The port is a little bit weird, so we can actually open this and see the application running, and we can click the counter button. But I'm going to change the port into 3000, which is more common for React or Vue.js applications. So let's go under React folder and open the package.json, and right here I'm going to specify parameter port equals 3000. Okay, you save this, just stop the server and restart that, and it's going to spin up the server on port 3000, and we can open this, close the previous one, and we have the application up and running. Okay, now let's clean up our React project because we don't want everything what comes by default. Let's open the source folder, and inside there we have the app component. Let's start basically from the main.js. So it has the strict mode enabled and renders the app up. So if we go inside the app, we have right here all the HTML we see basically in the browser. So we don't need like these HTML, so we can delete that. I'm going to just type app right here, and let's remove this state as well, and we can remove everything. For simplicity, I'm going to also remove app CSS, and yeah, I can completely delete this app CSS. I don't need that. And let's have a look in the index CSS. I'm going to also delete that, and I'm going to paste my own CSS. Again, I don't want to focus on writing CSS in this particular video. I just want to focus on the flow of the front end and back end, and some logic and functionality, not the design. Okay, I'm going to paste my CSS whenever I need that. But then what do we have? So let's go in the assets. So we have the React SVG. We can delete that. We don't need that. And I think we're good to go. So we have one component, app component, which just displays app right here. So if we have a look in the browser, we see app displayed right here. Okay, so fine. Now let's install the router inside the React. So I'm going to stop the React server, and we're going to run npm install React router DOM, and let's specify dash uppercase S as well to install this and save this in the package.json. Okay, so we have installed the router. Let's spin up the server, npm run dev. And now we have to create a router and configure routes. Okay, there are multiple ways to create routes in React application. I'm gonna do the following. So I'm gonna create a separate file called router.jsx, and I'm gonna basically import the create browser router function, and I'm going to specify right here routes. Okay, so make sure that you import the function from the React router DOM. In my case, PHP Storm automatically imported that. VS Code might also import this automatically, but make sure you have all the necessary imports you're going to see in the video. Okay, so in this case you have to type the following import, and we have to specify right here routes, and let's actually assign this into a variable called router, and then we have to export default router. Let's export this as a default. And inside roads, we have to specify few roads. Roads are generally associated to some components or views. So now let's talk about structure of our React project. Okay, so we can create a components folder and put everything right there, but this is something I don't like. I don't like a single folder which holds every component's views and so on. So I'd rather create separate separate folders for components and for views. Okay, views, let's call this views. Views will be all the React components which are associated to a road, specific road. We can call this also pages. Okay, and inside views, I'm going to create like login.jsx. Let me actually copy and paste and call this signup.jsx, and let's create users.jsx as well. Okay, and let's start with the login, and I'm going to generate the functional component. Oops. I think I don't have the live template. So let me quickly set up the live template. I'm going to open the settings and search for live templates. Then I'm going to search React right here. It really doesn't matter in which group you're going to put this. I'm going to put this in the React group because that's more logical. Live template, I'm going to call this RFC. And the context will be JavaScript and TypeScript. And RFC will trigger export default function. The cursor, I need it right here. Okay, like this. And then we're going to return this. And we can return the fragment. I know this is a little bit out of scope of this video, but I'm going to do this very quickly. Okay, so just like this, we have the template. So I'm going to click OK and click type RFC, hit tab, and it's going to generate the following boilerplate code for me. So I'm going to call this login, so that the component name will be obviously login, and right here we need to type login as well. We can even wrap this inside the div. Okay, now let me copy and put this in the sign up. Just change this into sign up, and then paste this into users, change this into users. Okay, so now we have the views and we want to associate those views to roads. Let's go in the router, and right here we're going to define path. Well, actually my indentation is set onto 4 spaces, which is something I also don't like. So I'm going to quickly open the editor config file, and right here I'm going to configure that for every file name extension which is JS or JSX or CSS. Okay, let's set the indent size to be 2. Okay, so I save this and go in the router and format the code, and that's it. Okay, now the path will be login, and we have to type right here element needs to be a login component. Okay, and the login needs to be imported from views login JSX. Okay, and just like this, we have created the login road. Let me actually duplicate this and call this sign up, and the component needs to be sign up as well, and that needs to be imported. And users right here. Okay, so we have 3 roads. Now let's go in the browser, and if we just reload the page, we're going to see still up, because we have created router, but we don't use this router. Okay, to use this, we need to open main.js, and we have to remove this app, and we have to create a row. Let's create router provider. Okay, and we have to specify right here the router, which needs to be imported from the file we just created. So here we have this router file that was imported in the main, and then we created right here this router provider. Now, if I save this and have a look in the browser, we see not found page. Why do we see this? Because we have not configured any route for the slash. Okay, so there are no roles for slash. Let's go now in our application and basically create a not found component as well, not found view. So basically anything that is not caught by one of the roles above, anything, okay, should be caught by our not found view. And let's create this not found view under views folder. Let's call this not found. Okay, I'm gonna call this not found. Well, actually the component name is not found, but the text will be something like 404 page not found. Okay, like this. And now let's have a look. So users, why do we see users? Not found. Let's go in the router, and right here we need to use not found component. And again, this component needs to be imported in the router. Now if I save this, I see page not found. Of course you can write your own HTML in this not found component, your own CSS to make this page prettier, but that is the functionality. Okay, and let's format the code. I want it to set on 2 spaces, which is fine. Okay, so we have the not found page, but how do we access the login? So we just need to put in the URL /login, and this is the login page. If we just type sign up, we have the sign up page, and for users, we have the users page. Okay, now let's start to talk about the layouts. Okay, so we have 3 roles: sign up, login, and users. And in most cases, login and sign up will have the same layout, and anything basically which will be visible to the users when they log in inside the system will have its own layout, like the admin panel type of layout. Okay, so let's create now layouts and use them. For this, we can actually create dedicated layouts folder and put those components inside there, but I'm going to create components folder in this case and put my layouts right there. Okay, so let's create guest layout.jsx, and let's generate the component guest layout, format the code. We need to type guest layout right here. No, let's actually leave this empty. We're going to take care of this later. And then I'm going to create also default layout. Let's open the default layout and change the name into default layout. Okay, we're going to work about the content of this layout, but let's start with the guest. So we have to use this layout, but also the child roles needs to be rendered inside the layout. Okay, let's start step by step. I'm going to open router. Here's my router, and let's create a new route right here. Okay, and that new route will be for the default layout. Path on slash, basically, we're going to use element which will be called default layout. Okay, we're going to have additional path, and we can give this path also slash, and I'm going to explain why I do this. Curly braces, path slash, we're going to use right here guest, oops, we need like this, guest layout. Okay, and those 3 roles basically need to become children of one of those roles. Okay, so like in the default component, in the default layout, let's define children. Inside there, we're going to define, well, let me actually copy cut the users and put this as a child of the default layout. Okay, make sure you have this path also starting with a slash, and then we have the login and sign up to become children of the guest layout. So children right here and the layout. Let's format the code. Let's put comma right here. And now we have 2 layouts, 2 main paths and components. Like we have the default layout and the guest layout. And these 2 components are children of the guest layout. And these, well, this route, users route, and we can also create, let's actually duplicate this and create, for example, dashboard and let's very quickly create dashboard. Inside there we need dashboard as well, and right here we import the dashboard. Okay, so and these are the children of the default layout. Now let's start with the guest layout. So if we open guest layout, let's give it div, and inside there we need to render the login or sign up. For this we have to use outlet component. Okay, outlet will be the place where the child road will be rendered. Okay, and now if I open /login page, we see login right here. Okay, so the page is still rendered, but anything what I put right here, extra div elements, if I put this outlet inside the div element, and if I put some here, some text right here for guest users only. Okay, I save this, I see this for guest users only, and then whatever is rendered inside the outlet. If I go in the sign up, it has the exact same layout, so this does not change, only this portion is changed. Okay, and just like this we have a guest layout. We don't actually need these text and extra div elements. We're going to apply a little bit styling on this, but now let's define the default layout. But before that, I'm going to quickly open the router, and inside the router I'm going to define let's define path /. Okay, whenever you try to access /, I want to redirect user to the users page or dashboard page. In this case, let's redirect it to the user. So we're going to use navigate for this. Let's specify inside to be users, and let's put comma right here. Okay, so now whenever we don't have not found on / anymore. Okay, instead, actually we do have, and we do have an empty page, and the reason for this is that inside the default layout we don't have outlet. Okay, we have not told React application to render child rows inside right here. Okay, so let's give div right here, save this, and now we see users. And if we just delete and leave on empty, we're gonna still see in the URL users. That's because we redirect user to the users. If we don't want to redirect user to the users, but instead still render the users, we just need to put the users component right here. Okay, and in this case it doesn't matter if we access / or /users, we're going to see users page rendered. But let me actually return this into users. Okay, now we have two layouts. This is the default layout. Let's put some text inside the default layout. Default. And we see default right here. If we access /dashboard, we see default. If we access /login, we don't see this default. Okay, so we have two layouts, but we need to detect somehow which layout or which page we need to render. Okay, and that should happen based on the information if the user is authorized or not. And we need some kind of state management to save the user authentication information, and maybe in the future authorization information as well. Okay, so but first at the moment we just need to know if the user is authenticated or not. Okay, so talking about the structure of the project, I'm going to create a new folder right here, call this contexts. Okay, inside which you can create multiple contexts. In this tutorial, I'm going to just create one context, and it's going to be the main state context. Okay, let's create a new JavaScript or JSX file, and I'm going to call this context provider.jsx. Okay, and right here we have to create state context. State context equals create context. I want to create context, and I want to import the create context function from React. Okay, and this create context basically accepts default values right here, default value right here. You can pass the default value. So I am going to pass the default value, but first I'm going to show you why the default value is important. Okay, so actually let me pass the default value first, and then I will show you a little bit later why this default value is important. Okay, that is important basically for autocompletion, for IDE, for VS Code, for PHP Storm, but I'm going to show you this in action. So inside the state, we need at least two informations for now. So we need the current user information to display in the navbar, and I'm going to specify this to be null, and then we need token. Okay, again, I'm putting this information right here for just auto-completion purposes. So you can set this null, all of them. And then down below, we need to create the context provider. Okay, so let's just define export const context provider to be a function. Okay, so as an argument of this function, we have to accept props and we have to take the children from here. Okay, and we have to return JSX from here. Now let's just return our state context dot provider. Okay, this is something we have to return from here. And so right here in this state context provider, we have to specify also a value. Okay, the value has curly braces inside. Let me zoom in. So this one has curly braces inside, but I'm going to add additional curly braces to mean that I want to pass an object right here. Okay, so this curly braces is just for React. Additional curly braces is that I'm passing an object right here. And inside there, I'm going to pass the user information. Okay, before I pass anything, let's define right here a couple of states. An actual state. So right here, we created the state context with the default value, but we don't have an actual state for this. So let's create state for user and set user, use state, and let's pass null or an empty object for the user. Okay, let's create also token and pass right here underscore set token, use state, and the default value for the token will be null. Okay, why I call this function underscore set token? Because I actually need a separate set token function right here. Okay, so what is the purpose of this set token? It's gonna accept the token and it's gonna call the use state's set token to set that token inside the state. Okay, I could not name this set token because I would have the function with the I would have an error basically. Okay, so and then I need to set this token also in the local storage or in session storage. So if token exists, then on local storage set item for the key like access token, I'm gonna pass the token. So I'm saving this in the local storage because whenever the user authenticates, we take the token and we need to set this in the local storage. So whenever we refresh the page, the user needs to stay as an authenticated person. Okay, if the token was not passed, I'm going to call local storage remove item access token. And that is the set token function. Let me zoom out slightly. Okay, so we have this set token function. And as an initial value for this token, we can take the local storage get item access token. Okay, so that can be the default value. At the moment, it will return null because there is no default value for the for a currently access token. Okay, so we have the set token. Let me zoom out slightly, and inside the value, we have to provide the information we have. So we have to provide the user information. Well, actually, let's call this user also. So we have to provide user information, and that's going to be the user. We have to provide the token, and let's specify right here set user function as well, and set token. So right here we are exposing set token without underscore, because that needs to also put the token inside local storage or just remove it from the local storage. Okay, so we are exposing these two functions, and in between these opening and closing tags of the state context provider, we have to render children. Okay, and I think we have this context provider ready, and let's collapse this. And at the bottom, for easily accessing this context provider, I'm going to export a constant function use state context. Okay, and that's going to be a function which will simply return use context state context. Okay, and make sure use context is imported from React. Okay, so this is how our file looks like. Small additional thing, because we are exposing set user and set token as well for auto completion purposes. Let's put them right here as well. Set user to be a function and set token to be function as well. Okay, so we have our state ready. And now, based on whether the token is available or not, we need to either render the default layout or the guest layout with the corresponding pages. Okay, for guest layout, we might need to render the login page. Let's start with the default layout. I'm going to open default layout. And right here, I am going to use the state context. Okay, so we're going to use the function use state context that needs to be imported from our context provider. And let's create two variables. One will be the user and second will be token. Okay, and then I'm going to check right here. If the token does not exist, we are going to return navigate component, and 2 will be login. Okay, so if the token does not exist and user is trying to open a page which is a child page of the default layout, it means that user tries to open some protected data, protected page, but the token does not exist. So user should not be able to access that page. And if we check in the browser at the moment and just try to access users, for example, hit the enter, we are redirected to the login page. Okay, so we cannot access like slash, or we cannot access dashboard, or we can't access users. Basically anything that is a part of the default layout, we cannot simply access. Now we need to do something similar for the guest layout. Let's open guest layout. We are going to use state context const. Let's only import token at the moment. We don't need user. If the token exists, so this means that if the user is authenticated and if the user is trying to open one of the pages which is part of the guest layout, like either login or sign up, or in the future you might also add password request, password reset page as well. So we need to return navigate redirect user to the slash, okay, which is at the moment it will show the users. Okay, so I save this, and at the moment the token does not exist. Okay, so if I just reload the page, we are on the login. However, if I go in the context provider, we are taking this access token, which at the moment doesn't exist, as I mentioned. If I delete this and provide token to be some value, trueable value, non-falseable value, I save this and open the browser. If I just reload the page, okay, that does not seem to be working. Let's go in the guest layout, use state context. If the token exists, we need to redirect to slash. Let's inspect this and check if we have any errors. Okay, it does not come right here. We navigate user to slash. What is slash basically? I think that is the reason. So if we just navigate into the slash, basically in this case, probably means this slash, which is part of the guest layout. Okay, so if we just navigate into users, for example, we just reload the page. No, it doesn't work. Okay, let's debug this and understand what is the actual token value, because that should work. The token is null. Okay, that is something. Let's go in the context provider. So we have the token, initial state. We export the token right here. Why the token is actually null. So I save this and just reload the page. Okay, so the token is still null. And I think we don't call set token, so we don't set. We have the context provider. Oops, my bad. I completely forgot that creating the context does not mean anything if we don't use the context, of course. So that's a small mistake we made. So we basically need to use a context provider. Our context provider, what we created and exported from this file. So this context provider. So basically, I'm going to create a component context provider right here. And then the router needs to become a child of this context provider. And the context provider needs to be also imported from the file we just created. So if I save this now and just reload the page and hover over on the token, we see it's 1, 2, 3. So let's actually go in the guest layout and remove the debugger and put a slash right here, reload the page, and we are on the default page. Okay, so if I just try to open the sign up page, I am redirected to the slash, which is by itself redirects to the users. Okay, and just like this, we have protected roles for guest and for authorized users as well. So let's go in the context provider. Let me actually close everything. There are two main tabs. Let's open context provider and let's specify right here the local storage get item. Okay, perfect. Now if I just reload the page, I am on the login page. And now I think we can start working on the markup. Just I'm going to easily do that. Okay, let's open index CSS, and I'm gonna copy and paste the CSS file. So as I mentioned, I don't want to spend time on writing CSS. So that is like 200 lines of CSS. I'm gonna put a link to this CSS file in the video description. Okay, so that you can copy and paste. And you can also find this CSS file in the GitHub repository. I'm going to put in the description, but I will put the separate link for this CSS. If you don't find this, definitely let me know in the comment section. I will add that. Maybe I hope I will not forget. Okay, so what does this do? So it imports the open source font and resets some styling and creates some basic styles for basic elements like input and buttons, and sets some colors, and nothing that complicated. Okay, everything is very basic. And now let's open default layout, and I'm going to start working right here. Okay, so I want to create that. Let's start from the very top, and I'm going to give this div element an ID called default layout. Okay, inside there we're going to create a one tag, which will be a side, which will be for the sidebar. Inside there, I'm going to create two link tags. Okay, so the link tags are the React router tags, and we have to specify right here the actual path. So the first one is for the dashboard, and the second one will be for users. let's specify users right here. And whenever you type create this link tag, make sure you have the link component imported from the React router DOM. Okay, so we have just created this aside. Down below the aside, I'm going to create div, which will have a class name of content. Inside there, I'm going to create header, which will be the navbar actually. And let's inside there just put a div with the text header. And let's create another div, which will be for the user information, okay, for the authenticated user information. Let's leave this like user info. Let's leave this as it is right now. And below the header, I'm going to create main tag, which will hold our outlet. Okay, and let's delete this outlet. So we have this default layout. Now let's go in the context provider and set some value right here, 1 to 3. So I save this and go in our application, and voila. So we see our layout. Okay, so we have the dashboard, we have the navbar, the user info right here. And when we click on the dashboard, it's going to show the content for the dashboard inside the layout. When we click on the users, it's going to show the info for the users. Okay, so far so good. Now let's go in the login and create probably a login page. Okay, let me finish one thing before I go in the login page. So we have the user information in the context provider, okay, right here. And that user information needs to be displayed in the default layout, okay? So now I will provide right here an actual data, like name is, for example, John. Okay, and in the default layout, I am actually already using this user state, and I will output that user information right here. Okay, so I want to output the user.name, and then let's create one link element, which let's give this one class name btn logout, and this one will have a text logout. Let's give it also href like this. And of course, it will need onClick event listener on logout. This on logout does not exist yet, so let's just create an empty function const on logout. Okay, let's accept event right here and call event prevent default. Okay, now let's have a look in the browser and we see John. Okay, so and just like this, we are reading the context API data states and just displaying this in the navbar. Okay, which is perfect. Now let's go in the login JSX and format the code and just create the markup right here. Starting from the very first element, let's give this one like a login sign up form class. Let's give this one animated and fading down as well. Okay, then let's create another div which will have a class name form. Inside there, I'm going to already create form which will have on submit, and let's create a dummy function. At the moment, const on submit is an arrow function. Oops, I did something wrong. Like this, we need to accept an event and again call event prevent default. Okay, and inside the form, we will need few inputs. Let's give this one a placeholder email. So this is the login form, so we just need email and password. Okay, so let's give this one type password, and this one needs to have type email. And let's create a button which will have class name btn and maybe btn block as well to show it on full width. All these classes are defined in the index CSS. Okay, as soon as you copy and paste these, there's nothing to do. And let's give this one text login or submit. Let's give it login. And down below, let's create also a paragraph, which will have probably like a message class. And inside there, I'm going to give it text not registered. And then let's create a link into a router, into route, sign up. Okay, and let's give it text, create an account. Okay, so I think we have the form ready. I save this, and we need to delete the token to access. Otherwise, even if we just type in the URL, we cannot access the login page. So let's go in the context provider, and right here, let's give this null. So I save this, and now this is the login page. I want to delete all this saved information. Okay, perfect. And let's actually give the form title as well, probably above the form tag or maybe inside the form tag. Let's create h1. Let's give this one class title, and the text will be login into your account. So I save this, and we have this text. And pretty nice looking login form. So I click this create an account. It's going to open this sign up, and now we can work on the sign up page. Let's go in the sign up JSX. Let's format the code, and I'm going to copy. I think I can copy everything and put this right here, except that the text needs to be changed. I'm going to type right here, sign up for free. The onSubmit function does not exist, so we have to create that. We need an event right here, and we need to call event prevent default as well. And down below, probably we need to type already registered. Oops. Sign in, like this, and this needs to be login, and this needs to be sign up, and we need additional field which will be password confirmation, and one additional field which will be full name, and maybe let's call this email address. So I save this, and this is our sign up form: full name, email address, password confirmation, the button, and the link to the login page. Okay, I think this looks nice. So we have the animation as well, and the login and sign up, but all of them are in the same layout. Okay, now pay attention one thing. Because we have the same layout for the login and sign up, look at this. This portion is actually repeated, okay, in the login and sign up. And even in the future, if we create, for example, a request password reset page, it will probably have the same type of layout. So we can grab this and delete these two divs and format the code right here. Go in the guest layout. Let's delete this from sign up first as well. Go in the guest layout. Before we go in the guest layout, let's have a look in the browser. So we ruined our layout, but if we go in the guest layout and put this right here and extra div right here, now our outlet is inside these two div elements. If I save this, we have now with the exact same layout. Okay, just click sign in, click create an account. In this case, we actually lost our animation, because the animation was added on the outer element, and the outer element does not change. Okay, so we can add the animation to forms, but this white card will not be animated. Okay, but you get the idea. I just wanted to give you an information, more realistic view of what is the purpose of this guest layout. Okay, so I'm going to undo the change, go in the sign up, undo from here and undo from login as well, and just leave it as it is right now. And we have this nice animation. Now let's start actually implementing the sign up and login. And for this, the frontend will need to make requests to the server side, to the backend, and send the currently what information is filled up inside the form, basically. Okay, so for sending requests from frontend to backend, we're going to use Axios, which is, you probably are familiar with Axios. It's a very popular client for HTTP requests. So npm install -s Axios. It's going to install the Axios, and then let's spin up the server again, npm run dev. And in my source folder under React, I'm going to create an Axios client, axios-client.js. Okay, so, and why do I need this? And I'm going to explain every step what I do right here. So first of all, we need to create Axios client, which will be axios.create. And that Axios needs to be imported. So let's just delete the last letter and hit the control and space. And then this is the import what you need to write. Okay, import Axios from axios.create. And we have to provide, we can provide a few options, but what we are interested is the base URL. Okay, that's going to be the API URL. In our case, our API is running on localhost port 8000. This is the Laravel application. Okay, this is where the API is located. So I don't want to hard code a localhost port 8000 right here. Instead, I'm going to use the environment variables for the React application. How I can do this? I have to create, not under the source, under the React folder, I'm going to create a file called env.example. And the extension is .example, env.example, okay? And we have to provide right here, you are probably familiar with the en file, but if you are not, that's a key value storage, mostly used for configuration, and whatever you put right here as a key, that's going to become the environmental variable in your application, okay? So I'm going to type vite, so basically any key, and again, stick with the documentation. So if you just search for vite environment variables, you're going to find out more about this, okay? And you can find out that all the user-defined environment variables needs to start with the vite prefix, okay? You can find out this information. So I'm going to define vite underscore app, or maybe API base URL, something like this, okay? And that's going to be HTTP a localhost port 8000. Okay, I define the key and the value, but I need to use this key in my Axios as a base URL. Okay, we defined env example, but that's not enough. The example basically, as the name says, also is an example of the actual .en file. Okay, it's a sample. So I have to copy and paste the example and call the actual en file.env. So this is how it should be named. And then I'm going to take this key and use it, but not directly like this. So we have to use import.meta.env, and any environmental variable will be inside this env, and .vite API base URL. Okay, this is our base URL, and we can specify right here /API if we want. So there are two approaches. We can specify /API right here, and then we can leave this as it is right now. Or because we are talking about the base URL, we can leave this on the domain right here, and then let's use backticks, and inside curly braces, we use the variable and then /API. Okay, and just like this, we have created Axios client. Okay, what do we need to do with the Axios client? First of all, we have to export this because we will need this in the login form and sign up form and in many other places. So export default Axios client like this. And then we need to put interceptors as well. So what are the interceptors? Interceptors are special functions which will be executed before the request is sent or after the response is received. So on the Axios client dot interceptors dot request dot use. So I'm going to use the following interceptor. So I'm telling Axios to use the following interceptor before making request. So right here we get the config object, and we have to return also the config object, the same config object. But we can modify this config object while we return that. And this is exactly what we are going to do. So inside config headers, I'm going to set the authorization, authorization. Okay, and that's going to be bearer in the access token what we saved in local storage. Okay, and that token is actually saved in the local storage. So const token equals local storage get access token, and we pass this token right here. Okay, but you might have a question: what if the user is authorized, for example, when the user is trying to log in and the token doesn't exist, and we pass this token right here? The token will be null, and we pass null. And the point is that when user is trying to log in or sign up, the token should be null. So there's no need to pass anything right there. Yes, this header will still be added, but that doesn't hurt. So we can even add additional check only at this header if the token exists. But I think that's not necessary, because if the token doesn't exist and we pass it as null or incorrect token, that's not a problem. Okay, so we have now the request interceptor, and let's create also response interceptor. Okay, Axios client dot interceptors dot response dot use. We get the actual response. So the use basically accepts two functions. On fulfilled, when the promise is resolved, this is when it is resolved, and the second function is when it is rejected. Okay, on fulfill we get the actual response, and we have to return that response. So we don't do anything with the successful response at the moment. However, we can log that information if we want, but I don't need that right now. On rejected, we're gonna get an error, actual error. So I'm going to take out the response coming from the server. So the actual response coming from the server will be a property of this error. So I just destructure this error and take out the response. Okay, so now I can check if response status equals 401, which means that if the request was made and the response tells us that the user is unauthorized, user is not authorized, for example, trying to load the users, but the token was invalid or the token did not exist for some reason. Okay, in this case, obviously the request would not be made if the token doesn't exist. So probably the reason is when this happens is that token is probably an expired or incorrect token. Okay, so then from the local storage we can run delete remove item access token. Okay, so whenever we get the response, we remove the access token, and that's it. So in else case, we can write some other cases, like if the response status is 404, we can show a not found page. If the status is 403, we can show forbidden pages, and we can handle other scenarios right here if we need. But at the moment, I think it is not necessary. We just throw the error. Okay, if the code comes right here, it means that the response was rejected, and we need to throw the same error what we get. And just like this, we have this Axios client ready. Now I think we can go in the login form, or probably we should start from the sign up and make request to the server. Okay, so we obviously need to send request on submit, but we don't have yet information what needs to be sent to the server. So we have inputs right here. By the way, that should not have type email. So we have name and email and password confirmation. And we need to gather that information. We can either create state and create like a two-way data binding on these input fields and then get that state information and send it to the server. Or we can create refs and take the values from the refs. Okay, in this case, because we don't need the actual state to be displayed somewhere on this page, I think we don't need states, because if we just create states, we would cause the state to be every time updated when we type something in the input field, which is something we don't want. So let's just create refs. Const name ref is use ref. And let's duplicate this 3 times. That's going to be email ref. That's going to be password ref. That's going to be password confirmation ref. Okay. And we have all of them. I'm going to copy all of them with the multi-cursor and just create ref equals this. Okay, now I have refs, and right here on submit, I can create a payload object, which will be an object, and inside there, we will have the following information. Okay, that's going to be ref dot current dot value. Let's format the code. The only thing I'm going to change is the password confirmation needs to be underscore case instead of camel case, because this is how Laravel will search for the confirmed value of the password confirmation. I'm going to explain this on when we talk on the backend side. So we have the payload, and before I send this payload, we can print this in the console. So let's have a look. Let's go in the console. Let's just type Zura with some email and password. Let's hit sign up. And we see right here the whole information. If I click sign up again, it is printed right here. So we have the full information. And now let's make requests to the server. I'm going to type Axios client, and this needs to be imported from the Axios client.js file. Axios client.post, we're going to make post on the /signup URL. We're going to pass payload, and we expect some successful response as well as maybe an error. Okay, so inside successful response, right here we will get an actual response. The response will contain the status code and headers and many other things, and it will contain the data. So I want to destructure the response and take out the data from here. And that data will be the actual response, what is returned from the server, actual JSON object. And I will assume the server will return, I want the server to return user information and the token information, okay? Because I want to save that user information and token information in the context state, in the state context. Okay, so for this, let's use the state context first. Const, we need, okay, use state context. And what do we need? So we need probably set user. And now this is a perfect time to show you one thing. So when I hit Control and space, it auto-completes these two things for me, okay? And that comes from the default value from here. If I just delete everything from here, then I hit Control and space, nothing, no suggestions, okay? So this comes, the auto-completion comes from the default value. Even if you don't give any actual meaningful value, just provide the properties right here, okay? Now I want set user and set token. And right here, I will assume the data would contain user and token right there. So I'm going to call set token data.token and set user to be data.user. Okay. And just like this, we set the user information and token information. Whenever the token information is available, user will be immediately, the application will re-render and the user will be redirected to the dashboard page immediately. There is no need to do any explicit redirect. Okay. And we need to handle the catch case inside which we might get some errors. So we might have error right here. I want to take the actual response coming from the error, error.response. And then I'm going to check if the response is available and if the response.status equals 422, which means a validation error. So in this case, I know that a response data, which is an actual JSON object coming from the server. So response.data will be the actual response coming from the server, and this one will have an errors. Okay, I know this, and we will have a look together as well. So I take those errors, and I want to display this error somewhere, right? So I don't have yet state for this, but I'm going to create that. So I'm going to just type the response data errors. And I think this is the perfect time to pause right here and go to the backend and start implementing the actual sign up and login and logout as well. And I think it's also the perfect time to pause the video, hit the like button, and continue watching. Okay. Now let's bring up the terminal. That shouldn't be opened. Let's bring up the terminal, and I'm going to stop the artisan server, and we have to create a new controller, which should be auth controller. Okay, so PHP artisan make controller, and I want to create this auth controller under API folder. So API/auth controller. Let's hit the enter. Okay, auth controller created successfully. Let's open auth controller. Here we see that. And let's create 3 functions: login, sign up, and logout. Okay, and for login and sign up, I will need separate request files. So I'm going to generate 2 request classes as well. PHP artisan make request login request, hit the enter, and the second one will be sign up request, hit the enter. Okay, inside login request, I'm going to use login request class instance. Inside sign up request, I'm going to use sign up request, and inside logout, I will just use request. Okay, and I will need to open API PHP and configure routes as well. So route, whenever post request is made on sign up, it should call auth controller class sign up method. Okay, and let's just replace this with the import, and at the top you should see use up HTTP controllers API auth controller. So, and let's duplicate this, and that's going to be for login, and that's going to be for logout. So we have all 3 methods ready. Okay, the login request class and the sign up request class at the moment are empty. Okay, but the request class main purpose is to have rules and do the validation and return the validated request object from which we can get the actual validated data. And this is what we are going to do right here. So I want to get the actual data from request validated method. Okay, that's going to be validated data, and that will contain only those fields which I'm going to describe in the login request as a rules. And then I'm going to create a user. So I'm going to call create method on the user, and I'm going to pass name, which will be data name, and I'm going to pass email, which will be data email, and I'm going to pass password right here, but I'm not going to save the plain password, of course. I'm going to run a bcrypt function to encrypt the password and save it like this. Okay, and I need to this one will create a user and return that user, so I'm going to save that user somewhere in a variable, and then on that user I'm going to call a method called create token. Okay, autocompletion doesn't work right now because that user is kind of unknown type of a variable. Okay, and I'm going to add an annotation for the IDE, for the PHP Storm, that is an instance of app models user. And now when I start typing the method name, it's going to autocomplete that for me. So right here I have all the methods which is available in the user. Okay, and I need create token, and I'm going to give the token name like main, for example, plain text token. Okay, so let's save this in a token variable, and then I'm going to return two variables, user and token. This is what we expect on the client side. So now look at this. Whatever I return from here, like response array user is the user and token is the token. Okay, so this array will become, this whole array will become data right here. And then I get the data user and data token. Okay, I can simplify this and just return compact of user and token. And that's it. So, and just like this, we have the sign up ready. Actually, we just did login, I think, right? So let's just move this into sign up. Okay, and then now let's do login. Let's move this sign up first and login second. Okay, so what do we do in the login? So again, we need to get the data, which will be request validated data. We need to get the actual, well, we need to try to log into the user. Let me actually call these credentials, because that is actually credentials. And I'm going to call auth facade attempt method and pass the credentials. I want to try to log in with these credentials, and the credentials needs to be an array and it should contain email and password. Okay, if that attempt didn't succeed, then I'm going to return the response with message like provided email address or password is incorrect. Okay, if the attempt was successful and the user was created, I want to get the user information. So user will be from auth facade. I can get the user method. Okay, and then on that user, I'm going to call again create token, but again, the ID doesn't know what is this user variable. So let's add an annotation right here, user, and then I call create token and give this one a main. And then I want to get the plain text token. So this plain text token is only available for just created token. So as soon as you get this once, you won't be able to have a look at this anymore. Okay, so we get the token, and we have the user and token again, and we need to return the same type of response from login as well. And on logout, we need to get the user, and we can get the user from request user. And again, let's add annotation right here that this is an instance of user. And down below, we're going to call on user current access token delete. Just like this. What is this user? Let's have a look. This user is UpModels user. UpModels, okay. Okay, that should be good. Current access token delete. And then finally, we return a response. We can return an empty response with the status code 204, okay? Which means that the response, the request successfully worked, but there is nothing to return. And just like this, we have the authentication controller, auth controller ready. Now let's go in the sign up request and create rules. First, let's change the authorized into true. And then let's define name needs to be required. It needs to be a string with a maximum of like a 55. We have to provide email to be required. It needs to be email, valid email address. And let's talk about the password. So the password needs to be required as well. It needs to be confirmed. And let's specify also some additional password validation rules, like minimum of 8 characters. We need letters and maybe symbols as well. Okay, and just like this, we have the sign up request ready. For the email, I think we need to also add that it must be unique. So email must be unique in the user's email field. Okay, so this is the rule name, and this is the table name, and this is the column name. Okay, I think now we have the sign up request ready. I'm going to copy this, open login request, change this authorized into true. Make sure you change the authorized into true into both sign up request and login request. Then inside the rules, we don't need name. We need email to be required and email, and right here we have to specify exists. So the email, whatever comes right here, must exist inside the users table email column. Okay, and the password is required as well, and we don't need like confirmed or the rule. Okay, and just like this, we have the login and sign up ready. All right, now let's try to make requests from frontend to backend and go in our application, go in the network to observe it and fill up with some data. Let's specify my email address, specify password, and hit sign up. Okay, what happens? Do we send a request? Okay, the request is not made. Let's go in the sign up, understand what happens. Maybe we just reload the page and click sign up. No, nothing happens. Let's put a debugger right here. Okay, the code comes right here. We call him in prevent default. Then we have the payload right here. Okay, well, let's just continue. Is the payload printed? Yes, it is. Then we pass the payload in the Access Client post. Let's print right here error. I think some kind of error is happening and we don't see this error. So let's click sign up. Here's the error. Type error. Cannot read properties of undefined reading status. That happens in Access Client JS line 17. Response status. Okay, some kind of error happens in the Access Client, and that should probably, that happens from here. Okay, now look at this. So error happens, I think, right here, because we need get item, but that error was suppressed and we did not have any idea why this happened. And that's, I think, a perfect example to debug this particular problem. And if we go in the sign up and remove this and just reload the page, I click sign up and the code execution comes right here, but the request is not saved, printed. Okay, so what should we do? Okay, that's really good example of debugging. So obviously the error basically happens somewhere right here, but we don't see the error. Okay, you should start with small steps, like let's remove then and catch, and let's see if the request is made. So click sign up, let's have a look, go in the network. I think no request is made. Go in the console and we see right here an error. Okay, cannot read properties of undefined, reading status. So as soon as we remove that, now we see an error, and that comes from here. Okay, so I think what we need to do is in the Access Client, first of all, we need to fix this problem, of course, but before we fix that, if for some reason some error happens right here, we can put this entire code in try catch like this, and then we can print this error right here. Okay, console.error maybe. Let's have a look. Let's click sign up, and now we see this error is printed twice, but right here we have the exact reason. This error is the exact reason why this happened, and that is the local storage get is not a function. Okay, so let's go right here and change this into get item. Let's save this and let's go in the sign up and uncomment this code. Save this, let's go in the network, we'll reload the page and click sign up. Okay, the request is made. However, I think the server is stopped. So let's run php artisan serve. Let's go in the front end and click sign up. And look at this. So we get the response 222 because we didn't pass any kind of information. We passed everything empty. Okay. And this tells us that the name field is required. So this is the overall message, but each field has its own message as well, like email and name and password. So let's actually try to display those errors somewhere inside the form. I'm going to create a state for this, const errors, and set errors. Use state. By default, the errors will be null. Okay, and whenever we get these errors, and we can print these errors, we are actually printing these errors in the console. So if we go in the console, right here we see these errors as well. So what we can do is call set errors and pass these response data errors to this method. Okay, and just like this, we have the access, we have the errors, and we can print these errors, for example, right here. If errors exist, then let's render a div element. Let's give this one class alert, and inside there I'm going to print my errors, but my errors is an object. Okay, look at this. So the errors is an object which has key and the value is an array. So I want to iterate over my object, and I want to iterate this with object.keys I'm going to pass errors right here, then call map. I take the keys, iterate over my keys. Right here I get the key, and I want to return a JSX component from here. Like I want to return a paragraph inside which I want to output errors for the given key, which by itself will be an array. Okay, so I want to take these and then take out the first element from there. And because we have a loop right here using map, we have to provide key right here as well, which will be key itself. So this key will be given to key of the paragraph. And if I save this and click sign up now, I see these nice validation errors. The name field is required, email field is required, and password field is required. Okay, I think that's perfect. Now let's provide these fields. Oops, I didn't type whatever I wanted. Let's click sign up and look at this. Look at this, what happened. So the user was created. Let's have a look in the network. So we got successful response. We got the user information. We got the token. And just like this, we set the token in the local storage as well. And let's check, by the way, local storage. Local storage. Here we have this token is probably something else, but here we have this access token. Okay, let's go in the, what is the second token? Okay, let's just try to clear up the local storage. Now we are on the login page, and now let's implement the login. That should be pretty straightforward. And then let's see whether it is set inside the access token or in token. I think this token was something else. Let's go in the login. Okay, and let's create refs first. Let me quickly copy and paste. Okay, I need email and password ref. Let's put them right here. I need this part in the on submit. So we get the payload, we get the name, email and password, and we make requests. We need set user and set token as well. So we get this, and we probably need errors as well. So we get all these. Set user, set token, set errors as well. And down below right here we need ref to be email ref for the first one and password ref for the second one. So I save this, and now let's try to log in. I just click login, and we get the errors right here, and we can actually print these errors in the same way we are doing for sign up. So I'm going to copy these errors, and below the H1 paste that, save this, and here we see name fields required. Okay, we are making a sign up request, which is wrong. We should make login request. Let's click login. Okay, login request was made, and we see right here errors. The email field is required, password field is required. Let's provide correct email address but incorrect password. Let's see. Provided email address or password is incorrect. Okay, now look at this. So we have provided email and password, but we still see the same error. Okay, that happens because the server returned some kind of other error. So if we go now in the catch, right here, we have to adjust this. So now the response actually has a message, and I think we can always display a message right here. I believe we can do it like this. So if we leave these both empty and click login, what will happen? So the email field is required and password field is required. Well, we can actually, I think if we go in the login controller, we can remove required from here and just leave this as a string. Okay, password is just a string. And in this case, it will not complain about this, that it is a required, but this must be a valid email address. Okay, yeah, we can leave this required, it's not a problem, but we have to modify the actual returned response. Because whenever we iterate over our errors, we assume that errors is an object which has key and the value is an array, we have to do something similar right here if the message is received. Okay, so let's do like this. Inside this if statement, let's create another if response.data errors. If that exists, let's set this, else we assume that there will be data message. Like if we provide right here the email and some password, this will have only message. So I'm going to call set errors, pass an object, key will be something like email, for example, and the value will be an array. I'm constructing the same type of object. And inside this, we're going to have response.data.message. And it's going to display this error message. So I click login. And one additional thing, whenever we make requests, we have to reset the errors. So right here, I'm going to call set errors to be an empty object, or maybe null. Now I click login, and let's have a look. Provided email address or password is incorrect. Let's see what is the actual response. Okay, it looks like this returns 200. Okay, this is wrong. Let's go in the auth controller, and on a login right here we have to provide some kind of incorrect credentials error code, which can be like forbidden or validation errors like 422. So if I save this and click login right now, okay, now the code comes right here and we have the response. The response contains data and the data contains message. The data does not contain error, it contains message. And right here we see the provided email address or password is incorrect. Okay, this is exactly what we wanted to do. So if we go in the login right now and remove this debugger and just click login, so we get this information. Okay, now let's provide correct credentials, hit the enter, and we are logged in. And if we have a look now in the local storage, we have the access token right here. And if I reload the page right now, I am on the login form. Why? Because in the context provider, we don't get the token from the local storage. I deleted this once for testing purposes, and then I did not return it back. So that should be get item access token. So we get the access token, set it into the state, and now we are authorized. If I just reload the page, I am authorized. Okay, and just like this, we have implemented authentication in our application. And I think now we can focus on logout. Okay, the logout obviously should be inside a default controller where we have this logout button. But before I do the logout, I want to show you one additional thing. So if I just reload the page, the user information right here is dummy user information. It is written John right there. If we go in the context provider, that comes from here, okay, which we don't want. I'm going to return this into an empty object. And whenever I just reload the page, we don't have the user information. Why? Because we don't have anything about the user. So what we need to do is to make request when the default layout is loaded. We need to make request to get the currently authorized user information and set this into state. And inside API.php, there exists a root for this, okay, which only allows authenticated users with the auth sanctum middleware, authenticated users to access the /user and get the return the user information. Okay, this is the endpoint we need to access. If we go in the default layout again, and I'm going to use effect hook. Okay, we pass a callback obviously, and the second argument will be an array, an empty array, which means that I want to listen to component did mount event, and whenever this happens, I am going to make get request on /user, which will return the user information. So right here we get the response. I destructure the response, take out the data from there, and then I'm going to call set user and pass the data. Okay, do I have this set user? No, so I can import this set user from this, not import, but take out this set user from the state context, and just like this I can use that. So if I save this and just reload the page right now, the user information becomes available. So the request is made to the server, which returns it, and then we have it available. Okay, so this is one thing, and now let's implement the actual logout. If we go in the default layout, we listen to the logout click. That's going to be pretty straightforward. Logout Axios client dot, we have to make post request on logout, and whenever the logout happens, we then basically we have to set user to be an empty object, and we have to set token, which is not used right here, set token to be null. Okay, we set the token to be null, which automatically will cause the user to be redirected to the login page. Okay, whenever token becomes null, then inside the default layout, this check will rerun and the user will be navigated to login. So again, let's just click on logout. And I think the logout didn't work. We have a 500 error. Call to a member function, create access token on null. Okay, this happens because if we go in the API, the logout can only be called for authorized users. Okay, it should not be right here. It should be for authorized users. And if we go in the logout, the request user was actually null. But let's move this into auth sanctum. So I have to create a group right here. Let's pass a function, and inside there we put this, and let's take this out and put this right here as well. Just we need to change this root get. Just like this. So I save and click logout again, and now we are logged out. The token was deleted. The response was successful, and we were redirected to the login page. Okay, now let's try to log in again. Hit the enter. We are inside the system. We can navigate between pages. We are authorized, and we click logout, and we are logged out. I think that's perfect. Now let's start working on to display the users table and implement the users CRUD. So let's log in. And let's go under the users, and we have to create table. So I'm going to open now users.jsx file, and we have to define state as well as the HTML. So let's start with the state. So we will need users and set users, use state, and the default value will be an empty array. We need also, I'm going to show a loading text until the users are actually loaded. So loading and set loading, which will have a default value false. So by default, the loading is false. And I'm going to use effect and make request to get the users on component did mount. So passing an empty array as a second argument, and let me actually create const get users function, which will make a request Axios client get users. The backend side does not exist yet, but I will assume that the backend is available on /users endpoint. So I make requests right there, and inside then we of course get the response. We destructure the response and take out the data from there. This is what we are interested. And then let's print the entire data. Okay, well, let's print the data, and let's also give it a catch. Inside catch, we need to set loading to be false. So basically, before I make request, I'm going to set loading to be true. Then when we get the response, I'm going to set loading to be false as well. And in catch, we set the loading to be false as well. And on component did mount, I call get users, okay, which should return all the users. Well, before I continue right here, maybe it will be better if we first implement the backend side and then continue right here. Okay, so let's that was the React server, so I think we need this running. I'm going to stop the artisan server, and we have to create the user controller. So PHP artisan make controller. I need to call this under API folder user controller, and we have to generate the controller with request and resource as well. So now I'm going to open the documentation and search for make controller. Let's search for controllers. Okay, let's search for make controller. Here it is. And I'm interested in resource and requests as well. Right here. So I want to specify that I want this controller for model, which is called user. I need resource as well. I need requests and resource as well. Okay, resource and requests. So when I hit the enter, it's gonna create few classes. It's gonna create the store user request, update user request, and user controller. Okay, and this is intended for API. So now let's start the server, PHP artisan serve. And now if I open user controller, this is the controller which we're going to use. It has the index method to get the users, create, store, show, and edit and update. No, this is not what we want. So this is intended for the website. It has the 7 methods. Okay. However, we don't need the edit, and we don't need also, I think, create. So those are intended to render the forms. So what we need is for API. So I should probably delete this user controller and delete the store user and update user request as well. Run the same command but specify --API, which is, I think I missed. And now if I open this user controller, it should have only index, store, show, update, and delete. It does not have edit and create. Okay, and I'm going to generate also resource. So let's just run PHP artisan make resource user resource. Let's hit the enter. And let's start with the resource. Okay, so let's open user resource. What is the resource? So resource is basically a class which is used to convert the database models into JSON serializable data, which will be sent from the server, from the API. okay, to the, like in this case, to the browser or to any client. Okay, so from here we need to return an array of our data, what we want to expose from the user. So the user basically has the ID, the user has email and name as well. So I want that information to be returned. So ID, for ID key, I will return this ID. Let's duplicate this. For name, I will return name. For email, of course, I will return email. And I want to return created at as well. Okay, this created at is an instance of Carbon. So I'm going to call format on this, pass year, month, day, hour, minute, and second. So we have the resource ready. Now let's go in the user controller and start implementation with the index method. Okay, so from here we're going to return the user query. I want to, let's order by ID, descending the latest users at the top, and then I'm going to call paginate. So even though we are not going to implement the pagination on the client side, and I'm going to leave this as a challenge to you, I'm going to still return pagination result, because I want to show you what type of result is returned when you paginate the data. Okay, and then give you also hints how you can show the pagination links and how you're going to actually implement the pagination. Okay, so we paginate and get the response, but we need to call user resource collection method, pass this user the result of pagination, and return it like this. Okay, for the paginate, let's pass it 10 as a per page value, and we can return the response type into anonymous resource collection, just like this. So the index method is actually already ready. If you go in the store user request, this is a request which is empty at the moment, but let's assume that this is already implemented. So we're going to get the data, which will be request validated data, and I'm going to call user user create, and I'm going to pass this data. But before I pass the data, I want to set the data password. I want to encrypt the password, right? So we're going to run decrypt data password. Okay, so I get the data, I update the password, I create the user. Here we have the user, and then I'm going to return new user resource passing this. Okay, and we can also return status code 201 by just putting this into a response function with status code 201. Okay, down below in the show, we just return new user resource, user here. In update, we have the user and we have request as well. So I get the request validated data, and I'm going to set this into data. Then on the user, I'm going to call update, passing this data. However, it might have also password. So I need to check if inside the data there is password available, then I'm going to encrypt the password. So I call decrypt on data password. Okay, and we call update, and finally we return new user resource passing the actual user. So we save this, and the last method we need to implement is destroy. So I get the user, and I'm going to call delete on the user and return response empty response with status code 204. Okay, so we have the user controller ready. Let's go in the API and create route API resource on users endpoint for user controller class. And let's change this into import. Okay, now let's implement store user requests. First of all, we need to change authorized into true. Inside rules, we have to specify name to be required. When we are creating new user, we have the name to be required. It must be string, and maximum can be like 55 characters. We need email to be required, and it must be email as well, and it must be unique among users email field. So we are doing something very similar to what we did for sign up. We need colon right here, and the password will be required. I think we need confirmed as well, and we need password rule for minimum of 8. We need letters and symbols. So I save this, and now let's open update user request. Let's change the authorized into true, and down below let's adjust the rules. For this we need something similar, so I'm going to copy and paste this part. The name needs to be required string and maximum 55. Email needs to be required email, and this looks also good, but there is one small thing which we need to take here, and I'm going to leave this as it is right now, but there's a bug in this and we have to fix that. And the password, it is not actually required, but it must be confirmed, and here are the other rules. Okay, you might not update, I think I just closed it, update user request. So you might not update the password. Okay, so this is how we're going to do that. And the actual problem right here is that let's actually fix this. So whenever we are updating an existing user and we are leaving the same email address, it's going to complain that email must be unique inside the user's email. Okay, so the third argument inside the unique rule is the ID, which needs to be excluded inside the check. Okay, and right here I'm going to pass this ID. This is the request, and inside request we will have an ID. So I want to check, I'm telling Laravel I want the email to be unique inside user's email table for every other user except the user which has ID, my ID. Okay, and just like this, we have the update user request ready. Okay, now the backend is ready. If we go now back into users, when we make request, and right here we print the actual data. Now let's go in the users and just reload the page. And let's have a look. So we have some kind of errors. I think the backend server is not ready, is not running. So PHP artisan serve. So we just reload the page. Okay, by the way, if you pay attention, the request is made twice. Okay, right here and right here. That happens because the mount hook, the useEffect function is called twice. So, and that happens because we are running the React in strict mode. Okay, because of the strict mode on development mode, this is executed twice. Okay, this is not a problem when you run this in production. Okay, if we go in the console and info, right here we have the response, and the actual response has data inside there, and data is already paginated data, and we have links and meta. Okay, now I want to create like a 30 users from the database seeder. So let's open database seeder. What did I do? Let's open database seeder, and let's uncomment this. So I want to generate like 30 or 50. Let's generate 50 users. Okay, and let's run php artisan db seed. Hit the enter, seeding database. Let's run the serve again, and let's reload the page. Okay, now we see inside data we have 10. Okay, so we got the 10 users, 10 latest users. And inside links, we have the first, last, next, and previous links. But the most interesting is meta. So inside meta, we have every kind of information about pagination, like the current page, from, last page. We have 2 as well. So we are displaying from first to 10 records. So we can display this above the table or below the table from first to 10. We can display also what is the current page inside the pagination. We can display how many total records there are in the database. And we can also display which one is the last page. Okay, and we even have the whole list of links, which has also page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 2. And that 2 is, I guess, the next button. Okay, so we have everything what we need about the pagination. Okay, and you can get this information from meta and then iterate over the links and create pagination buttons. And whenever this link is clicked, you pass the URL to the Axios client get and get the user information from here, and then display that user information. Okay, it's going to be very easy and straightforward. I'm going to leave this challenge to you. If you want me to implement and create small separate video about this pagination, if you have any problems about this, just let me know in the comment section down below. Okay, so we have the users and we need to display those users. I think this is the only thing what we have remained. And let's start working on the template. Okay, so on this div element, I'm going to create inside another div, which will be for the header. And let's give this one users. And then I'm going to create also a link to new user form page. Okay, so for this, I'm going to use a link. That link is the React router DOM link. Add new. We don't have actually a route for add new user. Okay, I think this is something we need to do. Okay, let me go in the React folder under source and views, and let's very quickly create not two, but one component, one view. That's going to be user form.jsx. Okay, let's generate the component user form, and right here we have the user form as well. Now let's open router, and right here let's duplicate this, and I'm going to duplicate this twice, and I'm going to add users/new, and that should open user form. And the second will be users/and ID. Okay, and right here I'm going to use the same component, user form, and make sure that the user form is imported right here. Okay, but because we are using the same component for two different roles, let's specify key right here to be user create, and key right here to be user update. Okay, and just like this, we have the route ready. If we go in the users right now, we can link this into users/create or users/new, right? I think we have it new. Okay, perfect. Let's now go in the users page and click add new, and it's going to show the user form. Click on users and it's going to show users. Perfect. Now let's give this one some CSS classes or styles. So I'm going to give this one inline styles at the moment. So let's give this one display to be flex, justify content. I should have probably created a class for this as well, but I didn't prepare. So that should be space between and align items to be center. Okay, and let's give class to this add new button btn add. Save this and have a look. So we have the user's title and add new button. Perfect. Now down below this page header, I'm going to create a div. I'm going to give this one class name CRUD, animated, and fade in down. Okay, inside this card, we're going to have table, we're going to havethead, tr, th multiple times. We're going to display ID, name, email, and create date. And we're going to have actions column for some kind of actions. And we will need tbody, of course, inside which we're going to iterate over our users. So for this, I am going to do like this. So users dot map u, and then right here we're gonna have tr. Inside tr we're gonna have tds multiple times. So we output u.id, u.name, u.email, u.password, created at. And finally, we need some kind of links. So I'm going to put a link right here, which will be to users. Well, let's change this into curly braces, and inside there, I will need /users/ plus the user ID. Okay, that is the route to update user. And let's give it a text edit. And then we're going to have button as well, which will have an on-click event listener. And let's give this one also class name btn delete. And text will be delete. Okay, so let's see how this looks. We have a problem because on-click we don't do anything. So let's just remove this on-click for now. Okay, so the response is received, but I think we don't set the response. Okay, so I need to call set users, and because the data we are printing contains data itself inside, we need to set users data.data. Okay, so I save this, and here we go. So let me move this down. Here we see the user information. The edit button is really ugly. So let's give this one class name btn edit. Okay, that looks nice. And let's put nbsp right here for some extra space in between. So now we have those links. And if I click edit, that opens the user form. In the URL, we have the user ID. Okay, and in the user form, we need to grab the ID and fetch the user information from the server and display that user information. Okay, I think so far it's really good. We can already, I think, implement the user delete. So let's give this one on click. Right here, we accept the event, and I'm going to call on delete and pass the actual user. Okay, the user I want to delete. So then let's create const on delete. We accept user right here, and let's display the confirmation dialog. If window confirm are you sure you want to delete this user? Okay, like this. If the confirm was not accepted, then we return. Otherwise, we call Axios client delete, and we make request on /users /uid. u.id. Okay, and inside then we need to, okay, I think we can display the notification inside then. So I'm going to leave this as a to do, show notification, and do this as a very last thing. And then I'm going to get the user. So when the new user is added, I'm going to refetch all the users, because I want the new user to be also in the list. Okay, so now let's have a look. Sorry, not the new user, but the deleted user. I want it to be removed from the list. So if I just delete the user which has ID 50, click delete, we have the confirmation. If I cancel, nothing happens. If I click OK, then let's see. Okay, now the user with ID 50 disappeared. Okay, but it will be good to show a loading indicator when the table is in loading state. So we set the loading, but we don't use that. If you scroll down below, we have this t-body. I'm going to create another t-body, td, with call span of 5. How many columns we have? We have 5. So I'm going to create one td with 5 call span, and give this one also text center, and inside there I'm going to show text loading with 3 dots. Okay, that will be always right there, but I want to show this t-body conditionally. Okay, how I can do this? I'm going to use a loading. If loading is true, then I show this t-body. Okay, I format the code. And in else case, well, if the user is not available, we can leave this as it is right now. So if I just reload the page, we see loading and the table appears. If I just delete the 49 ID user, click OK, then we see the loading indicator, and then the table, the loading indicator disappears. I think when it is in loading state, we should not show the second t-body. So if not loading, then show the following t-body. Okay, I think that is more liked. It's more readable. Again, if I delete one user, we see loading, and that's it. Okay. So we have implemented the user delete. Now I think we can focus on a user creation and user update. Let's open user form, and right here we need to do a few things. So first of all, let's use the ID, and we are gonna take this ID from the URL parameters. Okay, we have this ID in this user form component, so we're gonna use params. And I want to take out ID from this. Okay, then if the ID is available, okay, because when we are trying to create new user, the ID is not available. Okay, whenever the ID is available, we are going to get the user information and load it into the form. So for this, I'm going to create a user and set user state, use state. And as a default value, I'm going to give it ID to be null, name to be an empty string, email to be an empty string, password to be an empty string, and password underscore confirmation to be an empty string as well, like this. So we have the user, and whenever ID exists, I'm going to use effect, and on component mount, I am going to set the loading. Well, I think we don't have the loading indicator as well. So const loading as well, set loading, use state loading, false by default. Let's give it false. And right here, I'm gonna, not right here, but here, I'm gonna set the loading to be true. I set the loader. Then using Axios client, I'm going to get the user. So users slash ID. I want to get that user information. Then we have the response and the structure that take out the data, and that data will be the user itself. So we're going to call set user pass the data, and we need to set loading to be false as well. And inside catch, we need to set loading to be false as well. Okay, so we have that part ready, and we can even have a look. So if we just inspect this, go in the network and click edit, we should see request made right here. Okay, we do see this request made. It's made twice, but we know why it's made twice, because we are running React in strict mode, and on component mount it calls the callback twice. So, but we get the user information right here. Okay, so I think we can now start working on the form, display few inputs right here. So I'm going to change this into a fragment, and inside there I will need h1 tag new user, but if we are updating the user, we need also update user, and that should be username. So I want to update this user. So then I check if the user ID exists. Okay, if that is not null, then we show update user. If the user ID does not exist, then we show new user. Okay, and down below we have a div. Now let's give this one card class, animated and fading down. Inside there, I want to show a loading indicator. So loading, if that exists, then let's create another div, give this one text center, and the text will be loading with 3 dots. And down below, I want to create the form as well. Form and maybe validation errors as well, just like we have in the sign up form. So if we go in the sign up form, sign up, we have the following errors. So we can get the errors in the user form and paste it, but we don't have errors. So we should probably get this line as well and put this right here. Okay, so we declare errors, and inside catch, when we update inside catch, we need to set these errors. But at the moment we haven't implemented the update yet, so we're going to leave this as it is right now. We have this errors portion ready, and now let's create form. The form needs to be displayed if the loading is false, like this. Okay, and we listen to on submit of the form, and we can call on submit function as well. and we need input, which will have, I think only thing what we need is the placeholder. Okay, so we have a name, and let's duplicate these a few times. We have email, we have password, and password confirmation. Okay, so we need to do two things. First, we have to declare on submit. Now let's do this right here. Const on submit is a function. We get an event and call event prevent default. Second is to implement two-way data binding for these input fields. So basically I'm going to give them a value to be user dot whatever is the input. So for the first one it's going to be name, for the second one it's going to be email, for this one well, for password and password confirmation we don't need to give some value back, but instead we need to listen to change for all of them. So on change we get an event, okay, and then I'm going to call set user. Okay, set user accepts it's a function to set value inside the state, and this one should accept an object. So what I'm going to do is this take, I'm going to pass an object, but take an existing object, a user object, destructure that, and then give additional value for each of the fields. Like for the first one, it's going to be name, event target dot value. So we have an event, which is the event of this change. Target corresponds to an input field, and the value corresponds to its value. So for the first line, it's correct. For the second one, we need to change update in email. For the third one, we need password. And right here we need password confirmation. And just like this, we have two-way data binding implemented on the input fields. And down below, we need to display a button. Let's give this one text save and class name btn. Okay, so I save this and let's have a look. So here's our form. So name, email, password, and password confirmation, and save. And however, we see right here new user, we should see update user. Let's go back and click another one. So we see new user. Why do we see? If the user ID exists, we should see update user. If it doesn't exist, we should see new user. Do we set the user properly? So let's put a debugger right here to understand what is the user, what we are setting. Let's just reload the page. Okay, we get the data, and yeah, this is the reason. So we get the data, and there is additional data inside the received actual data. So there are too many datas. We're dealing too many data. So if we go in the user resource PHP file, so this is the resource which is returned. And this one has a wrap property, public static wrap property, which by default is set to data. And the user information is wrapped inside that, that data. So if we set this into false, there will be no additional data right there. And the data, what we see, will be this object. If you don't believe, I just reload the page and mouse over on this, and we see this is the actual data. Okay, and if I click continue, now we see the user information. Okay, update user, Mr. someone, and then we have the information populated right here as well. Okay, and because we have two-way data binding, if I change something, this one is also updated. Okay, I think we can implement already submit of the user form. So what are we going to do on submission? So we have two cases: when we are creating new user or when we are updating the user. So let's implement both. One, if user ID exists, we are updating. So on Axios client, we're going to call put method on users slash user.id, and we're passing the entire user object, and we need to listen to the successful response, and then we need to redirect user to the users page. Okay, whenever the user is updated, let's use navigate. Use navigate that needs to be imported right here. So const navigate equals use navigate. Then right here, I'm going to call navigate and pass slash users. So we are redirecting user to the slash users, and we need to show notification. Okay, what about in catch? So in catch, we need to get the error, and right now let's do the same thing what we did for sign up. So inside catch, we get the errors. Let's do like this, and we have to set the errors. We are actually setting those errors, and then we have to display those errors, and we are displaying those errors. Okay, let's move this down below like this. Okay, so we have the catch ready. Let's, I think, remove this debugger, and we navigate. Yeah, everything looks good. Everything looks good. Let's implement the else state, else case. So in this case, we're gonna make post request on the just slash users endpoint, but pass the user, and we need to show notification still and navigate users, and in catch we do something similar what we did above. Now let's try to update this user, and I'm gonna just click save. Let's bring up the network tab, and I'm gonna click save right here. And what happened? Okay, it works successfully, and this is what we expected. So even if we go and edit this one and add additional 2 right there and click save, that was saved, and we see the updated data right here. So we have just implemented the update. Let's click add new. Let's enter James at example.com. If we don't provide password, let's click save. Let's have a look. Password field is required, so we provide the password. Okay, that is, by the way, doesn't have input type password. So let's open user form, and right here we have to provide type to be password. For email, we can give it also type to be email, just like this. And when I type no password, it is hidden. And just click the save, and the user was created, and the latest user appears right here. Okay, so we have implemented fully functionally CRUD application. Now let's display the notifications. Okay, whenever we delete or create or update, we want the notification to be displayed. Why I'm doing this? Because that is another great example of the context API and state coming from the context API. So let's go in the context provider and define right here a notification maybe, or message, as you want. Okay, so I'm going to call this a notification. Then down below, I'm going to define a state const notification and set notification. So we have use state, and default will be an empty string. Then we have to expose notification and set notification from here. And if we go in the user form, for example, when we update or create new user, and let's now use our state. So use state context, and we will need set notification. This is the only thing we need. If we go in the context provider, we have to provide set notification for auto completion purposes, like this. And then I'm using this set notification, and this is loading data, and right here I am going to call set notification past the string user was successfully updated. Let's copy this, remove the to do, and paste this right here. User was successfully created. Okay, now if we go in the context provider and actually implement the set notification, well, let me actually call this underscore set notification and create set notification, which will accept a message right here. It will call underscore set notification, and let's now use set timeout. And after 5 seconds, I want to set notification to be an empty string. Okay, so this one will set the message, and after 5 seconds, this one will reset the message. Now, if we go in the default layout, right here, I think we can use the notification and display that. So just like we are using a user and token, let's use the notification. And inside the layout, maybe right here, I am going to use a div element. I'm going to create a div element, which will have class a notification. Inside there, we will output notification, and that should only be visible if the notification is set, like this. So if I now save this and have a look, I click edit, I click save, and the notification is displayed. Okay, user was successfully updated, and it should disappear. Yep, it disappears. Let's create new one. Mary@example.com, some username and password, not the username but just the password. Password confirmation doesn't match. Okay, let's click on save, and the notification is displayed. And the only thing remaining is to open users, and from here, when we delete the user right here, let's put the set notification user was successfully deleted. And the set notification needs to be used. So use state context const set notification equals this. Okay, now let's click on delete on James, and we see the notification, and the user disappears. Okay, so we have fully functional CRUD application using React hooks, using context API. We have the roles, guest layout, authorized users layout connected to the fully functional Laravel REST API. And if you find this video useful, please hit the like button, because likes is what matters the most. That helps the channel to grow. And if you want to see similar videos on this topic, like Laravel, React, building full stack applications, subscribe to this channel, because I'm trying to make my focus more on building projects. All right, we have finished building our awesome full stack application with Laravel and React, and I think it's time to deploy it on a custom domain. We're going to create one domain for the front end, which will be for React, and second domain, which will be for the REST API of Laravel. If you haven't taken the hosting, you should take the hosting if you want to follow this tutorial till the very end. So you have to sign up for Hostinger, get the premium shared hosting, make sure you use the link which I mentioned in the video description, and during the purchase of your hosting, use the coupon code TheCodeHolic. Once you create an account for Hostinger and then log in, you're going to see the following control panel. This is Hostinger H panel. So from here, you can manage everything regarding the Hostinger. Let me zoom out slightly. So we have the website and hosting in emails, domains, VPS, SSL, and billing section. I'm going to zoom in right now, and I have those menu items on the right side. Okay, so I have one pending premium shared hosting, which I'm going to set up right now, but I use the Hostinger, as I mentioned, for all kind of personal stuff, for all websites, domains, and emails. I have everything right here. So let's click setup and choose a domain and set up premium shared hosting. Okay, I'm going to start now. I'm going to skip right here. I'm going to skip right here as well. And let's claim our free domain. Let's click right here and let's search for domain. For example, Laravel-react.com. Let's see if this domain.com is available. Oops. Let's remove it. Click search. Okay, I think this is perfect domain. So we have the domain available. I'm going to click continue right here. And here we can choose the server location. You should probably choose a location which is close to you or close to the potential visitors of your website for which you're building your website. I'm going to choose something in Europe and click change right here. This is my domain, my location, and click finish setup. So this will create shared hosting setup. But before that, we have to provide some information about us. If you are new to Hostinger, you should probably click add new profile and provide details about yourself. This is necessary for the domain. Okay, domain contact details can be changed at any time in the domain settings. And let's just click right here, finish registration. Once you click finish registration, it's going to take a few seconds to finalize everything and your account will be created. You will probably receive a confirmation email about that as well, and your also email account will be also created and you can set it up. Now, if we type laravel-react.com, we will see our application running, our website. So this is the default landing page for all new domains hosted on Hostinger. So this is the default page, but we don't have SSL certificate. Okay, so we need to install SSL certificate. I'm going to click Manage Site, which will open the control panel for my domain, laravel-react.com, not only domain for my shared hosting. And let's search for SSL right here under Advanced section, and let's click on this. So here we see that the status is failed. On the right side, we have this 3 dots. I'm going to click on this and reinstall. And click reinstall. It's going to take a few seconds until the SSL is actually installed. Let's click close. And after about 10-15 seconds, just reload the page and you're going to see the status will be active. If the status is still failed, if you get a message, for example, that it could not install, just try to reinstall it a few times, because when the domain is just created, the domain DNS service needs to be updated properly. Okay, you might need to wait about like 5 minutes when you create your domain, and then you should probably need to install SSL certificate. Okay, but just wait for 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes maybe, and then try to reinstall SSL and it will probably work. Okay, now let's open new tab and type laravel-react.com, and we see our domain under SSL certificate. So we have domain, we have SSL certificate, we have also hosting. Now I think we can already start installing our frontend as well as the API. Now let's have a quick overview of the H panel, Hostinger H panel, because we will need a couple of things. Okay, so from email section, we can create business email address, anything at laravel-react.com email, we can take that. From domains, we can control the subdomains, add another website, control redirects. This website section is mostly for WordPress related stuff. From the file section, we can have a look in the file manager and create backups or FTP accounts. Down below, we have the security section, and then we have the databases. So we can access the PHP MyAdmin and we can create MySQL databases, which we are going to also do. And from the advanced section, which is the most interesting and exciting thing for me, we have possibility to configure the PHP, configure its extensions. I'm going to click right here, configure the version of the PHP, and I'm going to, by the way, switch this to the latest one. Click confirm. We can configure which PHP extensions we want in our shared hosting to be activated and enabled. We can even change the PHP options. Let's click on this, and here we have pretty interesting and a lot of options basically. Okay, and I really encourage you to explore all these parts. We have possibility to configure the cron jobs. We have SSH access, which we will use in a minute. We have the Git and SSL section as well, and down below in other we have a few other important things. So we're going to start with the SSH. So we can explore our file system from the file manager as well. Let's click right here, and we have two options to access for our domain or for the premium web hosting, entire hosting. We can click for our domain, which will give us the public HTML inside which we have this default PHP, and that is the file which is displayed when we type laravel-react.com. Okay, I don't want to use the file manager of the interface. I don't want to use the FTP account. I want to connect using SSH and clone the project using Git and deploy it like this. But for the front end, for the React part, maybe we can use, for easily deployment, maybe we can use that file manager. Okay, now let's click on this file manager and actually open this. And let's go inside, and I'm going to delete this default PHP. I don't need that. And now if I type laravel-react.com, I'm going to see forbidden right here. Now we need to deploy React application. So let's open our project, and let's go under React folder. And we have to make a few modifications right here. Not the modifications, but small additions. So we have .en file, which is ignored file, and that has a URL for the local API. We have to create another en file, which is going to be for production. Again, if you want to know more about this, read the documentation of the Vite about environment variables. For our inside our .en production, we're going to specify the actual domain, which will be for the API. So we have the main domain, which is laravel-react.com. So let me actually type this, but our API will be something like api.laravelreact.com. Okay, and this is the this is what I'm going to use right here. Okay, for production. Let's remove the slash, and now we have the en production, and now I'm going to bring up the terminal, and from the React folder I'm going to run npm run build. And that's going to build for production, and it's going to use the .en production file, and the base URL inside Axios client right here will be for production domain. Okay, let's hit the enter right here. It's going to take a few seconds to build this, and finally we will have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay, that's all what we have and what we need. So, and that is available in the dist folder. So I'm going to open this in an Explorer right here, go inside the dist, and we have index.html and CSS and JavaScript as I mentioned, but we can also put the Vite SVG, not sure if we need that. Now let's go in the browser, open the file manager, and I'm gonna drag and drop these files and folders right here. Okay, and they have been successfully uploaded. I think so. Okay, now let's close the API, and let's just reload the main domain, and we see our React application. Okay, and if I inspect this right now and fill up some information and click login and have a look in the network, the request is made on https API laravel-react.com API login. Okay, this is the URL on which the request was made. However, that URL does not exist yet. Okay, but we have the React application deployed, up and running. However, if we just reload this page, we see not found. Okay, that's because we have to configure we have to create htaccess file and configure the Apache to redirect every request to index.html file. To make this working, let's go in the file manager right here, and I'm going to create new file, or let's actually let's click new file and call this htaccess and click create. And then I'm going to paste the following content. So I'm telling the Apache to enable the rewrite engine, and anything using this rewrite condition, anything this is not what is not a file name and that is not a directory, it needs to be redirected to the index.html. Okay, and basically everything, whatever we type in the URL right here, if it is not a file name, so if we just type right here an existing CSS file, for example, the CSS file we just uploaded, I'm going to mention this, or if I just reload this, just to make this really clear, hit the enter, it redirects to the login. And if I inspect this and go in the network, so it makes requests to CSS files as well, right? So here it is. So, and if I just open this in a new tab, that is accessible and that displays the content. Okay, and I don't want this to be blocked. I want this to be loaded. So I'm telling the Apache anything that is not a file and that is not a directory needs to be redirected into index.html. So if I type something right here non-existing, it's gonna be redirected to the index.html. Okay, I hope this makes sense. So, and we need to save this, obviously, and we have our htaccess ready. Now, if I go and just delete this, we see the login page, and if I reload, we still see the login page because that was redirected and caught by index.html. And just like this, we have the perfect setup for React application on custom domain. Now let's take care of the API, which is a little bit more challenging. Let's close everything. We don't need the file manager for Laravel. We need to connect using SSH. So I'm going to type SSH right here. And this is the SSH section. First of all, we have to enable SSH access. So let's click right here, enable, and we have that. As a choice of SSH client, I generally use on Linux, I use the built-in SSH client. On Windows, I use Git Bash. If you are on Windows and you have Git Bash, you can stick with it. But PowerShell actually supports SSH, I think. So right here, we have a command which we need to execute in our SSH client. This one, SSH-p, the port, username, and the IP address. So I'm going to copy this and paste in our PowerShell and hit the enter. Okay. We have to agree this, we have to take the certificate. If you're on Linux, again, you can just type the same command. If you are on Windows, you can just open the PowerShell and paste the command. And I'm going to hit yes right here, and we have to provide the password. But we have not specified the password yet. So let's click change right here, and let's actually generate some random password or just set our own password, whatever we need. I'm going to type my own password right here. And let's hit change. It's going to take a few seconds. We have that changed, and let's type to provide this password, and we are logged in. So let's clear up everything, and let's type ls-la. We are inside our Hostinger server, and we have this public HTML right here, which is a symbolic link into domains Laravel react.com public HTML. Okay, so we have to clone our project somewhere. So we have to understand really well what we are going to do. First of all, we need an actually working subdomain under SSL. If I just type right now API Laravel react.com, that does not do anything. Okay, we don't have the subdomain for this. Now let's go in our H panel and search for subdomains. Click right here, and I want to create API subdomain. Okay, and I want this to be by default in its own default folder. If I tick the checkbox, I can configure in which folder I want to create that subdomain. And by default, anything will be under public HTML. We're going to adjust this. Okay, we're going to adjust this. And let's actually remove this and hit create. So the subdomain was created. Now let's just reload the page. It might take some time. We have the DNS probe finished, and yeah, it might take a few seconds or maybe up to 1 minute, but we have to generate SSL certificate as well. Just make sure that whenever this is working, I'm going to pause the recording, and whenever this is ready, we need to install the SSL certificate. Okay, after retrying 1 or 2 minutes later, we have the domain ready, API laravelreact.com under SSL certificate. Okay, this is perfect. Now let's explore the file manager and what change was made inside the file manager. And I'm going to do this using terminal. I'm not going to open in the browser. So we are in our shared hosting at the moment, and we see public HTML. Let's have a look again. We have the public HTML. Now let's go under domains, and in domains, we only have one domain, laravelreact.com. Let's navigate into the domain and have a look what we have here. We have public HTML. Let's navigate inside public HTML, and inside there we have, this is important, we have the assets, htaccess, index.html, and vite. And these three is just for React application, but we have API folder as well. And this API folder is for our Laravel application. If we go inside API and have a look, we have default PHP, and that default PHP is what is rendered right here. Okay. Now we need to make it. It's a little bit tricky, so we need to make a workaround. Let's call it like this. Not a workaround, but we just have to create a symbolic link. Okay. I think it's better if I just show you what I'm going to do. Let's go under one directory back under domains. Okay, I'm in domains and I have laravelreact.com. I'm gonna put my project right here. It's not a good practice to put your Laravel project under API folder, because anything that is in this folder is accessible through the domain. Okay, so if I just open laravelreact.com and then specify API here, okay, look at this. So this shows the subdomains landing page. And if we take our whole application, entire application, and put this in API, that's a terrible idea. Okay, we should not do this. We should only have inside API folder what is web accessible. And what is web accessible, having a look in our Laravel application, only thing that is web accessible is under public folder. So the only thing that can be inside the API folder is to be one of the files or all the files from the public folder. None of the files and none of the folders except the public should be inside API. Otherwise, we have a big security problems in our application. Okay, now let's use Git and clone our application in a correct folder. I'm going to open my GitHub in which I have my project. You should probably using Git. If you are not using Git, I encourage you to use that because you're going to need that as well. So this is my project, Laravel React Starter. I'm going to clone this using HTTPS, and let's open PowerShell. And again, I'm in the domains folder, and I'm going to run git clone, paste my URL, and I'm going to call the domain to be api.laravelexample.com. Okay, this is the domain I want my project to be cloned in. Let's hit the enter. It's going to take a few seconds. Okay, it is actually already cloned. And now let's navigate inside API laravelexample.com. Here I have all my Laravel project files. I have the app, artisan, and everything. Okay, and I need to do a few things. First of all, I have to create, I have to run composer install. This is the very first thing. But actually, if I type composer -- version, I see that I have version 1. And look at this. So right here, I have version 1. Can I increase the font size of this? I think it's too small font. Okay, let's set this into 20. Okay, I think that's much better. Okay, so we have the Composer version 1, but latest Laravel needs Composer version 2. So we have to install Composer version 2. For this, let's open browser and just type download Composer. Let's hit the enter, click on the very first link, grab the following code, and paste in our application. Okay, and hit the enter. So it downloaded and created locally Composer far file. We cannot globally modify Composer command because this is installed by root users. But what we can have is a local Composer version 2. Okay, so the Composer far right here is a local Composer version 2. And if I just execute PHP Composer far -- version, that's going to give me version 2 right here. Okay, and this is what I need. And by the way, when you change PHP version from hPanel, remember we changed PHP version from here, from advanced configuration. Okay, that should change the PHP version right here. So we should have the latest version 8.1. Okay, now again, let's check. We are in the API Laravel example.com folder, and let's just run Composer install. But again, if you just run Composer install, it's going to use Composer version 2. We have to use PHP Composer far, which is a local composer, PHP Composer far install. Let's hit the enter, and now it's downloading all the dependencies of our project and installing that. Okay, Composer install finished successfully, and we have to do a few things. First, let's create .env file. So if we have a look in the file manager, we have .env example file, but we don't have .env file. So let's just run copy env example into .env, hit the enter, and now let's edit our env file, vim.env file. So let's change the application name. Let's hit the I to go in the insert mode inside Vim, and let's change the app name to be Laravel. Let's put this in the double quotations, Laravel React. Oops, React. And the environment, let's change this into prod. The API key, this is something we have to set. Let's disable debug, set this into false. And the app URL will be https api.laravelreact.com. Okay, so this is our domain. Then everything else can be left at the moment. We're going to configure the database and create that, but let's leave this as it is right now. And to save and exit from Vim, we're going to hit the escape button, then colon W and Q. Let's hit the enter. So we have just saved our .env file. And let's generate the key. Let's just run PHP artisan key :generate --ansi. Hit the enter. Application key set successfully. All right, so we have installed application, we have configured, we have created .env file, but everything that happened in a different folder, okay? And the different folder is under API Laravel example.com. And the subdomain basically, let's close everything and check the subdomain. The subdomain searches under API folder in our primary domain, okay? So let's go one directory back and navigate into laravelreact.com. And here we have this public HTML, and this is the API folder. Okay, so now I'm going to create a symbolic link from our API laravelexample.com/public index.html, or just maybe a public, into this API. Okay, if I have this index.html right here, not the index.html, but the index.php. So let me explain this very clearly. If I manage to have a link of this index.php, which is the entry script, the main script of Laravel application, into the API folder right here, then our Laravel API would be deployed perfectly. Okay, so we have to create a symbolic link. Let's navigate into API, And at the moment, we don't have anything. Yeah, we have the default. So let's delete this default PHP, rm default PHP. Okay, now we don't have anything there. And I'm going to create now a symbolic link, ln. I think first we have to specify ln --help. I always get confused. I have to specify two arguments. One is source, second is target. I always get confused which one is the first and which one is the second. Okay, where is that? Target and link. Okay, so we have to first specify the target, second should be the link. Okay, the target is my current folder. Okay, I want to create link right here. So ln-s, and then the target will be index.php. Okay, and then the link will be, I guess, let's start from the home directory. Okay, we have domains, we have API laravelexample.com, we have public index.php, and let's hit the enter. Okay, again, I got confused, so we had to do it vice versa. So first, let's actually do like, okay, ln-s, from the home directory, we need Laravel, we need domains API laravelexample.com, public index PHP into index.php locally. So I'm telling now to create a link of this file here, right here. Okay, so the index.php needs to be a link. Let's hit the enter. And let's type ls-la, and we see that index.php right now is a link to the following file. Okay, and now if I access API laravelexample.com, we should see something, and that something is working Laravel application with the latest Laravel version as well as the PHP latest version. Okay, so we have the API ready. Now let's create MySQL database and configure that and run migrations. MySQL, let's click MySQL databases. Let's call these Laravel_React. Copy these. The username will be the same. For password, we can generate some password, and let's just hit create. Now let's go in our application. And in the Laravel application is under domains, API laravelexample.com, and let's open .en file, hit the I to go in the insert mode, and change the database. Let's delete that, change the username and password. I have just copied the password, so I'm going to put password right here. For the database and username, we have that written here. So this is the database. I'm gonna paste it here, and I think the username is the same, so I'm gonna paste this here as well. Okay, now hit escape, :W and Q, and let's run migrations. PHP artisan migrate. Let's hit the enter. Okay, so the database migrations have been run successfully. Let's run actually database seeder as well. PHP artisan db :seed, hit the enter, seeding database. Now we know that we have created about 50 users in our database. Now let's check this in PHP my admin. So if we go or click right here, enter PHP my admin, that's going to take a few seconds to open past the authentication phase. Okay, so this is our PHP my admin, and click users, and we have 50 users. Okay, so the connection to our database works successfully. And now I think we can sign up and we can log in, and let's actually try this. Let's inspect if we have any error. We're going to know this immediately. I'm going to type my name, my email, and hit sign up. Okay, so we have error. Let's go in the network, XHR, and what error do we have? Okay, so we have the course error. It looks like we have the course problem. That doesn't seem to be working. And if we just open our API and have a look, so the problem is that the symbolic link to the index.php, I think, is not enough. Okay, that does not do what it should actually do. So if I just try to access API, we see it is not found, but we should not see that. Okay, now let's do like this. We are right now in the API Laravel example.com. So let's go one directory back into Laravel react.com and go inside public HTML and have a look. And I'm going to actually delete the API folder, and I'm going to create symbolic link. Where is the symbolic link command? Here it is. So I'm going to create symbolic link of public folder into an API folder. So previously I created a symbolic link of the index.php, but let's create a symbolic link to the folder. Okay, I'm gonna hit the enter. Now I have API to be a link to the public folder, and let's have a look. Let's access the domain first, and that works successfully. And now access to the API, and we see Laravel not found. Okay, we don't see Hostinger not found, we see Laravel not found, which is actually awesome. And if we try to access Signup, and we see the Laravel error, which is exactly what we expect. Now if I just delete this and go in the network, clear up this and hit the sign up, we see validation error. The password confirmation does not match. So that's, I think, a minor problem. If I provide my password correctly and hit sign up, voila, we are registered and logged in. So we have the CRUD for the users, we have navigation into pages, we can add new user if we want, we can edit an existing user, or maybe delete. Let's try all of them. So I just deleted user, let's add new user. Just make sure you test everything carefully before you decide that it is actually working. Let's click save. The user was created. Here we see Mary. Let's update this, hit save, and that works fine. And let's click logout, and we are logged out from our application. And just like this, we have deployed the front end with the React and the Laravel API. And I should tell you that our application is not bad deployed. It is deployed quite correctly and securely as well. So the only accessible thing we have is right here inside this folder, and anything that is inside this folder is web accessible, and we don't have files and folders that should not be here. Okay, this is very, very important thing, because sometimes beginner developers make this mistake on shared hosting, put their entire Laravel application in the domain folder, and then everything what you see on the left side would be accessible from the browser, like the Git folder and app and vendor and your .en file, which will have the information about your database and everything. And you should not have this. You should consider the scenarios and environment where you are deploying. And as soon as you understand how the deployment actually works and how the server works, then it's really easy to make a correct mapping of the folders, and you have your application up and running. All right, guys, that's it for this video, and thanks for watching. If you like the video, hit the like button. Recently, I made a decision to make my focus more on building projects, building and deploying. If this is something that interests to you, make sure you hit the subscribe button and enable notifications. If there is anything you want to discuss, please let me know about this in the comment section down below. And if you know a better decisions to make certain things, definitely let me know about this in the comment section down below, because I want to learn something new as well from you. All right, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next time.